Welcome back, everyone. In today's lecture, we are diving deep into one of the most powerful, creative, and technical tools at our disposal as a photographer: focal length. Understanding how focal length works is the ultimate key to controlling perspective, framing your subjects intentionally, and completely transforming how a viewer experiences the space inside your images. So, what is focal length actually? Scientifically, it is a calculation of distance, the measurement in millimeters from the optical center or nodal point of your lens to the camera's digital sensor. So let's look at a real world example using my own setup here. I have my Canon M50 and attached to it is a kit lens 15 to 45 millimeter, and I can actually see these readings somewhere stamped on my camera lens. So if you have a minute, I want you all to grab your own DSLRs and look at the camera lenses you have on and look at the readings that you have. So these are in millimeters, and it will also tell you the focal length ranges that you can operate on. Right now, this camera is one of the most basic street photography based camera with a basic kit lens that I use for demonstration. When I manually turn this lens ring all the way to the lowest number, that's 15 millimeter, the glass element inside this actually shifts to push the perspective back, giving me the widest possible field of view. So if I twist the ring all the way to the highest number, at least for this camera, that is 45 millimeter. For you, it could be 50. For some of you, it could be as high as 120 millimeter. Your camera lens will be huge as well. I have different camera lenses for different purposes, and we'll discuss the use case for different focal lengths as well in a second. So as I just mentioned, 45 millimeter, the glass shifts to narrow my view down and actually pull a distant object quite closer. So that's known as zooming in. But when we zoom in, the field of view actually shrinks. So camera lenses generally fall into two structural categories based on their focal length. So before we discuss this, I want us to just quickly think of a golden rule. If your camera focal length is small, the field of view will be pretty large. If the focal length is really high, the field of view will be very narrow. So there is an inverse relationship. Smaller focal length means a larger field of view, and a higher focal length means a narrower field of view, more magnification. So, two types of camera lenses. First, zoom lenses. 90% of you will have access to a zoom lens. So you can change between multiple focal lengths. So right now I can change from 15, then I'll go all the way to 45 millimeters. So I have access to 15 millimeter focal length, 18 millimeter, 24, 28, 35, and 45. And as I zoom in, the field of view is shrinking and the focus is on the narrow subjects. So again, we'll discuss about different use cases as well. So zoom lenses, I just mentioned, offer us variable range of millimeter values. And also, guys, the millimeter values is the calculation of the distance of your LCD screen with your sensor is to the center of this lens. So this is 15 millimeter for me. So for some of you, when you zoom in all the way to 100 millimeter, your camera center will shift, let's say, somewhere here. So that's 100 millimeter. And this will allow you to see how much you can zoom in and zoom out. So we use a smaller unit of measurement, millimeters, to calculate a smaller distance from a center of the camera's lens to the center of actually our center of our camera lens to the optical center of the camera. So the second type of lens that we can actually get is a prime lens. So these are a single completely fixed millimeter value that cannot really change. So some of them mostly that available on the market are 50 millimeter or 85 millimeter lenses. You cannot actually zoom in or out with a prime lens. While that sounds limiting, prime lenses specializes in optimizing that one specific single value, meaning that they contain higher quality glass elements, offer wider spectrums, and deliver significantly sharper images. Prime lenses are mostly used by filmmakers because they offer lower f-stop numbers and actually a higher aperture. So for example, when you get a prime lens, you can actually use lower f-stops like f.1.8, and that allows you to actually get beautiful portrait shots. So if you remember in our previous discussions, we sort of established that a lower f-stop means a higher aperture. That's amazing to have your subject in sharp focus and background blurred out. And a lot of filmmakers would want to do that because they want to feature or focus on their main characters to tell a more compelling visual story. Now let's talk about like different industry standards based on these values on paper to help you understand the tool that you have right now and maybe in the future to figure out which camera lens is actually suitable for your purposes. So there is this one interesting lens. It's known as a fisheye lens. I'm pretty sure that most of you have seen this sort of effect or might have used this. So the range for fisheye is 4 millimeter to 14 millimeter. So they are used primarily for highly stylized, abstract, distorted creative choices. The field of view is insane. It's not human. That's why the term fisheye or even bird's eye view, because field of perspective feels more warped and 180-degree. Now the next is 14 millimeter to 35 millimeter. Mine is actually 15 to 45, so it falls into this. This is known as wide angle. So your primary choice for expansive landscapes, architecture, and tight interior spaces. So that's why this camera is a great hiking tool. It's really lightweight and actually gives me enough room to get really decent landscape shots. Now, the standard lens that most of you might have is the focal length actually falls between 35 to 85 millimeters. So this is the ultimate everyday range for street photography, travel, and actually environmental portraits. And then moving from that, you have 85 millimeter to 135 millimeter, known as a short telephoto lens. It's highly coveted for isolated portraits and commercial headshots due to its flattering compression. So if you are into portrait photography, it actually allows you to be at a distance but get this beautiful magnification of one isolated subject. And some of you might have camera lenses that allows you to move from standard to telephoto, and some of you might have camera lenses that allows you to move from wide angle to standard telephoto. That's why different camera lenses would have higher price ranges depending on how much can you maneuver. So this is a pretty cheap lens because it's just a simple 14 to 35 millimeter wide angle lens, but I do have more specialized lenses that actually allows me to move from 12 to 60, but the way it's structured, it's really good for landscape and portrait shots. But then telephoto lenses that's actually above 85 millimeter will actually allow you to get this beautiful magnification. The only con is that if you have that lens, you wouldn't be able to get a really good wide angle shot for landscape. So that's why a photographer might have different lenses in their kit bag, and it's so easy to just pull them out and just plug in and play with whatever focal length makes sense to you. Now, I want to talk about medium and super telephoto lenses. I'm pretty sure you might have seen wildlife photographers actually carrying these huge camera lenses. So these are actually, as I mentioned, super telephoto lenses. These are built specifically for pulling in distant action, for sports, wildlife, and also astrophotography. So 135 millimeter or 300 millimeter, it could be the distance between the LCD screen to the center of the camera. So that's why these lenses are huge. They allow you to magnify like amazingly well to distant object. Imagine taking a shot of a bear eating a salmon. You definitely want to be at a distance, but definitely want to get a beautiful shot of that action happening. So that's why. So when selecting a lens, consider your creative goals. The 50 millimeter lens, this is often called a normal lens because it is 55 degrees cone of attention, which mirrors human visual perception so accurately, making your images feel deeply honest and balanced. So our eyes are prime lenses. I wish we can zoom in and out, but we have a fixed focal length, and scientifically it's being measured that our eyes sort of mirrors the 50 millimeter prime lens. So we have a 55 degrees of field of view, and we definitely feel, oh, I can see more than 55 degrees. No, that's known as your peripheral vision. So if you remember giving a drive, if you're driving test, they ask you, they test your peripheral vision, that can you see something blinking around you. You don't see it, but that's your brain reacting to the cars or the pedestrians passing, to your blind spot. So this is my blind spot, but I am aware that there are my hands or there is something happening around, but it's all blurred out, so that's not part of my regular vision. So hence 50 millimeter lens. And then, as I mentioned, if you pick a telephoto lens, that's expensive, but this actually lets you isolate subjects cleanly from afar, creating beautiful background separation and professional looking portrait shots. And then let's talk about macro lenses. So macro lenses is uniquely engineered to let you focus physically close to very tiny objects and then projecting them at a true 1:1 life-size magnification ratio directly onto your camera sensor. So this week's class exercise has this very strange sort of confusion because I ask the difference between a close-up shot and a true macro shot. Now, I have established different focal length ranges. Now, using that, I want to jump onto close-up photography and macro micro shots. So close-up photography simply means getting a close, actually, sorry, it actually simply means getting close to a small object. For example, an insect on a leaf or a person's face. Crucially, in a close up, your viewer retains a clear sense of context. You can see the subject and immediately understand how it relates to the environment around it. For example, a close up shot, again, it's going to be blurry. A close up shot might be this. We are actually able to see a figurine. So it's a close up shot. The shot that you see in this talking head video, it's not a close up shot. It's actually a single body medium shot because you're able to see half of my torso as well, and also you're able to see what's happening behind me. But for example, if I zoom in and you just see my face, that's a close-up shot, just the mic and the face. But then what is macro micro photography? Before we actually talk about that, let's unpack these two terms simultaneously and then together. Micro means something that's really tiny, like really tiny. An insect, a really small slug, a bee, a really tiny flower. That's in micro object. Macro, as an opposite, means something that's really huge. So when we combine macro and micro together in photography, this actually takes magnification to an extreme level. The subject fills the entire frame to isolate microscopic, abstract details like the individual patterns on, let's say, a butterfly wings. A butterfly is a small insect. It's very weird to say butterfly as an insect. Butterfly is so beautiful. Sorry, I just got distracted. So butterfly's wing has these beautiful patterns, right? And as a photographer, if you magnify a very small abstract pattern on a very tiny insect, you're magnifying an already micro object, but you're magnifying it for us to see its abstract pattern larger than life. I'm pretty sure you have seen a lot of macro shots of micro objects. So, because the subject completely dominates the composition, the viewer actually entirely loses any sense of real world scale or environmental context. Now, I want to talk about practical applications because most of us won't have access to specialized macro lenses, and that's totally fine. I want to be really practical here. So, before we jump into exercises about close up photography and macro micro photography, I want to give you some tips so that it's helpful when you actually execute these photos. First thing, with close up, you should aim at getting as close to an object as you can with your camera lens. So if you go super close to an object, you will then lose some focus. So find like the most closest or the nearest distance where you are able to maintain that focus. That's your close-up shot. But how do you get a micro macro shot? Now, when you take that close-up shot and import it, let's say, to Adobe Lightroom or Photoshop, I want you to crop it and magnify it. Isolate a part of that close-up photo. Like, for example, if you have a photo of a bee on a flower, and if you're able to see the bee and the flower, that's a close-up shot because you are still interacting with the tiny objects in the environment. But then the next step to get a micro macro shot is to then go on Lightroom, because since you already have this close-up shot, the quality is amazing. So magnify it and focus, let's say, on the bee. Let's say on the eye of the bee or any specific part of the bee that you found interesting, or the flower, and magnify it to the point that you're not losing a lot of quality. That's it. That's a hack to actually get a micro macro effect. And then just more editing tips. Think about playing with two of these functions, clarity and texture. If you feel that's too wonky, the quality is pretty low, try to play with clarity and texture to get that quality back. All right, guys, have fun with this lectures associated exercises. If you are taking my creative courses, you will have specific instructions. If not, I would definitely ask you to just sort of play around with the idea of close-up photography, micro macro photography, and then with your focal length, think about what is the use case for different focal lengths to get landscape shots, street shots, and portrait shots. All right, thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in our next course video lecture. Take care.